The next speaker is S.Niranjan Reddy.
Thank you, sir. Sir, may I start my speech by expressing my gratitude to the chair for allowing a short-term discussion, short duration discussion on such an important topic. Sir, I would also like to compliment Mr. Tiruchi Shiva for provoking this particular discussion. Mr. Shiva is one of the elders in what is informally referred to as the House of Elders. So he's showing us some guidance. I thank him. I'm also complimentary of our minister, Mr. Bhupendra Yadav, who's here showing the seriousness that he bestows on this particular topic. It's also greatly comforting, sir, that we have such an efficient minister who is shepherding India through these difficult times, taking care of our environmental interests. I'm also satisfied, sir, that the winter session of this House started with discussions on two important environmental bills, Wildlife Protection Act and the Energy Conservation Act. Maybe the winter chill and the bad air that comes with it is possibly setting the stage for us to discuss these environmental issues. Sir, I represent the state of Andhra Pradesh, which is particularly vulnerable. Like India as a country itself is more vulnerable to global warming. Andhra Pradesh state, sir, has 975 kilometers of coastline, which is the second largest. And it is on the eastern coast, which is now believed to be at greater risk of global warming than the west coast. We also have three major cities, Visakhapatnam, Kakinada and Machilipatnam, which have been found to be the first of the cities that may be affected by global warming. It is also a largely farming state, sir, and one of the perils of global warming has been the alteration in food crop patterns, the reduction in the crop growth output. So these are matters of great concern for the state as it is for the country. Sir, I would also like to bring to your notice and to the House's notice, my friend Mr. Amar Patnaik had already mentioned, there was a recent report which mentioned that India is particularly susceptible to any increase in temperature because the temperatures may cross the human tolerance level, and the poorer sections are the ones who are going to be most affected by it. The agricultural biodiversity is also going to be affected, and there is a possibility of a large-scale food crisis that may stare at India after 20 or 30 years because of the reduction of the food output. Sir, having mentioned the problems which have already been spoken to by the other members of the House, a few of the remedial steps that I wanted to suggest was possibly the government could look at having a disaster-resilient infrastructure. My friend Mr. Patnaik had spoken about moving to a resilience strategy and an adoption strategy. One of the suggestions I had for the government was to have a disaster-resilient infrastructure with special emphasis on global warming and abrupt flooding, because we have seen these as the immediate consequences of global warming. Sir, we could also look at an advanced warning mechanism which would help people. We could look at a disaster responsiveness program that is prepared for some time to come in the future. So there are also certain micro steps that could be looked at. While there are macro measures that need to be taken, there possibly would be, sir, a few micro steps that may need to be considered. Greece as a country, sir, has designated an officer known as a heat officer. The officer only looks at the aspects of global warming, advises the government on what steps need to be taken during the summer months when a lot of poor people would be subjected to the heat waves. Sir, we could look at having heat shelters, like we have some shelters during cyclone. When we see summer months that are approaching and we see that it's the poorer sections that are going to be most affected, a heat shelter that is prepared well in advance, which could deal with that the few heat days in particular regions when the heat waves cross, would be one of the suggestions I have. Sir, I have another suggestion. The world is moving towards a climate fund where the countries that are more advanced, that contribute more for economic pollution, pay towards this climate finance and climate fund, which is then used for mitigating or for improving situation in the lesser polluting countries. Sir, India as a country is equally diverse. Some states are much more developed. They have much more higher levels of industrialization. They have much more levels of revenue collection, tax collection. They are therefore much more richer, so to say, and they are also contributing more to the economic pollution and the warming within India. What India, one of the ministers from the last speech when we spoke on energy conservation bill, hearteningly told us that per capita contribution of India is only 1/3. While it is salutary and India would try to maintain that, I am only saying that if there has to be a climate fund or a climate amount that may have to be collected by the government for addressing these issues, possibly we could look at the world situation where the more polluting and the richer states contribute a little more so that the money could be then used for offsetting these effects in the other places. Sir, I would like to conclude by referring to one old native proverb. It says that we don't inherit our earth from our ancestors, we only borrow it in trust from our children. That we have only one planet, as one of the honorable ministers said, and I would think that the government is moving in the right direction, but this is an impending crisis that may need to be addressed a little more seriously and little more urgently. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.